sound or music is the intelligent language of the universe. So if it's a language that is understood by the universe, then I've had stars respond. I've had, animals, trees, whatever. The wind will all of a sudden start whirling around, and people would call it magic, but it's just making the connection from your heart and your mind and just really believing that you are connected with that being.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master San Qing, and I have an incredible guest today who is mastered in many facets of the diamond of consciousness, but one specifically in offering this incredible insight into the mastery of sound. I'd like to welcome to the podcast today, Ani Williams. How are you?
Great. Thank you, San. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm really happy to have you. It's amazing how the universe operates, just bringing incredible beings together, helping the conscious collective. But I would love to deep dive into sort of like a little bit of a backstory of how we got here today in your journey as a sound master.
Well, first of all, I never call myself a master because I'm always learning, right? There's always the next level of evolution and learning. And I would say I started at a very young age. I started writing, journaling. I started remembering my dreams and dreaming about things that would happen. And then I got into music at a young age. And music has really been my path to sound therapy traditions. And I would say the biggest influence has been the ancient traditions, the Sufi traditions, the Egyptian traditions, the Greek, and various strands that all did the same thing, and the indigenous traditions of the Americas as well. I started participating in a lot of rituals in my travels and musically as well as ritually, and realizing there was a common language between all of these cultures. And the bottom line was the sound was creating their reality. The sound was, how we use sound, how we use our words, what sounds we choose to listen to, really has a huge bearing on what we create in our lives and our potential for creating the ideal mission that we're here to do.
Wow. Yeah. So what was the first seed of your realization that sound was it? Where did you pick the from? There must have been a starting point.
Yeah. And it was actually when I think I was 3 years old, and my grandfather was a classical and opera singer, and my parents always had classical music playing. And there was a piece, I believe it's by Wagner, the Spec Zarathustra. Zarathustra. And I found myself going into an ecstatic state. I was whirling around the living room with this music. And I realized that I wasn't just this little child anymore. I was something greater. And I think that really did something on a deep level. But of course, it took many years to really get solid.
Right, right. And so what was the indicator or the crumbs that brought you to ancient practices? I mean, there's so many. I mean, I'd like you to be a little bit more specific what it is that you gravitated to, because there's so many offerings.
Right. I think one of my first main teachers, I never met him in the physical, but I started reading in the 70s the books on music by the Sufi Hazrat Inyat Khan. And he was a master of music as well as wisdom. And I was astounded at how specific they were about how important the human voice is, and that the human voice is a barometer of our state of being. So if you're trained to recognize the quality of sound in a
Mm-hmm.
person's speaking voice. You can tell their state of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really hit me in a very deep way. So I automatically gravitated then to study with certain teachers that had studied, scientifically this science of voice diagnostics. It's also called voice analysis. And
Mm-hmm.
I studied that with a woman named Sherry Edwards in 1992. And she had done a University of Ohio research project, and discovered the science of sound, how specific frequencies relate to states of being, emotional states, but also the physical specific areas, organs, minerals. It's a very specific science. So lo and behold, now at this stage in 2024, voice diagnostics is being used in mainstream corporations to identify the qualities for potential employees. You can read their personality just by their voice. Security systems, medical, they were able to identify specific strains of COVID that people were carrying just by their voice frequencies.
Mm.
So,
Well,
yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, and then, the non-invasive application of sound in medicine, to dissolve kidney stones and tumors, etc.
Well, that's an interesting point you bring up. So when you're using the sound, I think it's more common that people will refer to that as a non-invasive deconstruction of a kidney stone. Where is it more commonly applied within, like, tumors? Like, are we talking cancerous tumors or just tumors in general?
Well, I have to say that I'm not working in the medical field, so I can't speak with authority on that. But how we work in the way that I work with voice analysis. For instance, if I see a client and analyze their voice and they're dropping out in say a C-sharp tone, and they happen to have a tumor, I can't make any claims or else the AMA would come after me, right? But I can get the person toning the frequency that's missing in their voice that relates to a particular planet that was in stress at the moment of birth. And that also that frequency relates to issues that they have chronically. And one of those can be tumors and cysts. So the person can use the sound as a laser and direct the sound right into the area that's afflicted. And imagine, and I'm sure you understand this with your meditation traditions, you can imagine the dissolving of that tumor. And lo and behold, they have found that it can be effective. Again, I can't make the claims because then people will avoid the doctor. But I've had clients that turned around several medical conditions like low thyroid, for instance. I've done that myself. I totally healed my thyroid. And, I've been told I needed thyroid medication for years. So, there are many, many, many applications.
And so what color and tone are you applying to your thyroid? Is it an individual planet or what is it?
Okay. So say, for instance, a person is born with Saturn in Taurus. I didn't bring my chart, but I have on my website, people can see a wheel on the sound medicine pages, a wheel with the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 tones of the music scale. So, for instance, if a person's born with Saturn in stress with other planets, say Mars and Pluto, and it's in Taurus, we relate that constellation Taurus to a C sharp or do sostenido in Latin, frequency. And there are certain possibilities, propensities that happen for people that have an afflicted Taurus planet. So in the case I'm giving, the tumor relating to the frequency C sharp would be used to then dissolve that affliction. And this is something we find a similar tradition being practiced in the Neoplatonic academies and then going back to the Pythagorean. And I believe they must have been doing it in the Asclepian temples as well, because they were applying music and healing the soul in those temples.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so how long did it take you to heal yourself?
Well, I'm not sure how long, because the last time I had a blood test was a couple of years ago. I just recently got retested, and it was everything that was wrong is healed. The liver, the thyroid, and they said I had the blood of a very young person. So, I mean, an analysis of a much younger person. So sound can work miracles. And I think the biggest thing that I work with, I don't focus on the medical so much, because, I mean, that's an after effect, really. If we work on the tones that liberate people on a soul level, say, for instance, if you came to give some amazing dharma from something that you had accumulated in a past life that you totally forgot, well, having missing sounds can relate, or frequencies can relate to that missing piece in ourselves. It's like the pieces of a puzzle, putting them all together. So I work more with liberating creativity in people, liberating potential. And it's fantastic to see, transformation. And then the biggest thing I'm doing now, I'm phasing out of working with so many clients one-on-one. I have an online training, and I'm trying to train more people to do what I've been doing, because I've been at it for about 35 years.
Wow. Yeah, so the color aspect and the sound and everything is so powerful. Within Taoism, even today, you can go to a medical Qigong clinic in China where they use the sound. Actually, I see people like Greg Braden tossing around one video that actually shows a couple of medical Qigong doctors using sound to dissolve a tumor in this video. It's very popular. You've probably seen it yourself. It's extremely powerful. It goes to the center of the center of the center of the center of all creation, and is sort of like the most powerful tool, as is light, as is darkness, as is all things. All is one, one is all. And so I completely gravitate to what you're speaking on, because we normally use the tones of the first 9 letters. And so we sing those tones, and then we use different gears within the roof of our mouth and our tongue position, and that channels energy in a specific sort of way. And it's just super powerful. And
do you practice overtoning? Because modulating the tongue and the tones within the mouth, it's what I do on the recordings that I give people, the overtone vocals. I find that to be really powerful, and working with natural harmonics rather than an electronically created sound, using the sound of the human voice. It's the only living instrument on the planet. It's the most direct, and it's free. We each have a voice. So why don't we use it for healing ourselves and others?
Yeah. I don't actually practice the, you mentioned overtoning. Is it overtoning? No. What I do notice is just through, because specifically I train people in the energetics. It's all, and everything's energy, but
Right.
I will tell you that over 30 years, my whole voice has changed, and I actually can, without very little effort, create quite pleasant tones that I never thought it was possible that I could even do. And it just comes from that instrument, which is really interesting. To once in a while,
Yeah.
you just go, "Oh, where did this come from? I didn't have this last week."
Right.
Are you familiar with this type of phenomenon?
Right. And actually there is a man named Paul Newham from England, I think from London, who wrote a book on healing people from the opposite direction I'm working in. I work with the voice and people activating their voices to use the tones that are dropping out and that are really the key tones to their liberation. And he was working at the opposite end, what you've just mentioned, of purifying the self, transforming the self, and automatically the energetics and the voice change. So you can do it from both sides.
Yeah, it's phenomenal when you start just tinkering with this stuff and you have a construct and you kind of use the construct and using sacred sort of like shapes, and you go to the center of everything. When you get to the center of the center of the center, that's where the 0 point is. That's where the chi is, the prana, the God juice, the universal oneness, the scalar waves, whatever you want to call it. That's the source right there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the core truth, that when we can come back to our center on a regular basis, however we do that. I use meditation and toning, but meditation every day. And coming back to that still point is such a recharge. And I'm, getting on in years, and I have more energy than I had in my 20s. And, more productivity, more inspiration and creativity.
Yeah, I mean, when you unlock the energetic potential, and from Taoist practices, it's just about realizing that you can literally recharge yourself in seconds. I mean, the optimization for eating would be one meal every second day, and that really tunes things up. You don't realize how much you're expending and wasting that precious source energy on doing things that are not valuable. And when you realize that everything is energetics,
right,
all of a sudden you can draw from anything, and you can instantly feel like you've had 20 cups of coffee and you're on top of it. You're wired, you're awake, you're alive, and you're a testament to that, which is really amazing.
I would say I don't eat every other day. I eat every day. I used to fast in the old days, but anymore, I've found that what works for me at this age is eating really refined food, a lot of plant-based food, not strict, but, I incorporate protein, but really refined diet from a very pure source, and not very much, just, small amounts. And for me, that really just keeps me charged. And yeah. And then the music, of course. Music creates a coherent field if it's music based on beautiful harmonics, natural harmonics. And although there's a place for synthesized music, I'm a bit of a purist in that way. I find that the natural harmonic progressions you can only really achieve with a natural instrument, an organic instrument, a plucked string or a voice or a flute. And these instruments have been used for thousands and thousands of years for creating a coherent field, a spiritual dimension. We can use sound to enter multi-dimensions. So, it's really, in the beginning was the word has been so overused, but, we go back to that. And I remember, hearing a lot of people talking about that when I was starting this work. And I thought, well, in the beginning, was the word, the sound, but what about every day recreating our reality and being aware of what sounds we're using? And then to keep reinventing ourselves, recreating our atmosphere. And, the Tibetans talk about, certain mantras and certain use of the voice, creating with intention, creating a harmonic field that reaches out to a great distance. And that's what I was working on for the last, I would say, 15 years, 18, in the Pyrenees region, doing research in ancient sites and finding the response and the effect of using sound, whether it was chanting or singing or using the harp, and how nature and the different various sites responded to those sounds. It was extraordinary. So I've just published a book on it, and it's just, I had no idea if anyone would ever read it, and it's taken off pretty well.
Yeah, we'll have to get the audience to go and check that out through your website, pick it up, whether you sell it personally on your website or you sell it through Amazon or...
Yeah, major booksellers as well, like Barnes and Noble. If you want to support your bookstore, have them order it. But yeah, Amazon, etc., have it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's you mentioned the harp. I sort of gravitate to more simplistic flute and what we call a shakuhachi,
right,
which origins really, I'm a little bit of a purist snob, so most people are like, that's a Japanese. No, it's not. It originated in China, and it somehow got the Japanese flair to it, but that's where it came from. And that's okay. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful instrument.
I used to play the shakuhachi, actually, when I first started on this path. Yeah, and I used to listen to the recordings of Tony Scott playing the shakuhachi. And he did a duet with a Japanese master. And I think it was 1970. I had the album, and I kept playing it over and over again, And it's interesting when you say it's more of a universal instrument, because the ney, the Middle Eastern ney, is played in a similar way with the built-in reed, and you have to blow at an angle.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sort of wetting my whistle on a gushong. I think that's how I pronounce it. It's like a laid down sort of harp, and so that's an interesting instrument. And very, very beautiful to listen to, but it's like anything. You like shakuhachi. I just want the audience to know that's not. I'll pay you an endless amount if you can pick one of those things off the bat and play it like a master. That is not one of those instruments you just pick up and you're like, oh, look at how easy that is. I mean, it can be. I'm not going to dismiss people's abilities,
right?
But it took me a little bit of time to master that.
Well, and also, we have the ney in the Middle East, and we also have the quena in South America that's played in a similar way with blowing over just a single reed. And it does take a certain mastery to really get it.
Yeah. And so what did it take for you to master the harp? How was that?
I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but I play by ear. I had a few lessons in the beginning. I'm a bit of a rebel. I'm a purist for one thing, and then I'm a rebel on the other hand. I wanted to play my own music. I didn't want to learn somebody else's composition of classical music. And even though I love all music, I love every kind of music practically, but I felt like I had a mission to create something new. So I work with the harp and the voice together, and creating harmonies between the two. And then I also sing in a lot of different languages, and that came out of a lot of traveling and learning different traditions. So, for instance, chanting in Hebrew or Egyptian or wherever I go, South American languages, or and really bringing forth new music, but based on ancient traditions. I think that would encapsulate what I've been up to for many years.
Yeah, there's something very well, not something. It just is. It's very powerful. Excuse me. Within Taoism, we sing all our incantations because it's part of the ritual. It's part of the indigenous ritual of many of the things that you've spoken of the places that you've been. It's a universal, amazing, magical, connection that you have when you start singing this stuff. It's like, whoa.
Right.
Man.
There are so many instances that I can remember, being in an ancient temple, say at Tulum, with indigenous flute players, and they created an ambient magical zone with their music, the way they were bouncing off of the flutes. And then the birds were attracted and they started circling over our circle of people. And, over and over, there are thousands of examples of how nature responds. If I'm out on a walk and I see a deer, I'll just start singing to the deer in a language that I make up in the moment, in a melody I make up for the deer, just connecting, holding the eye contact. And I've done that with rattlesnakes. I've done it with frogs. I've done it with coyotes. I mean, every single creature in nature will respond if you really connect with them on an energetic level and then try to sing their song. Sing a song that engages them.
Wow. Well, where would you say you just intuitively, do you refer to yourself having guides or just intuition, or where do you get this sort of messaging from?
I think because I really trust what I feel, and it's intuition. And I think it's just a matter of connecting with nature. The Yaqui tribe of northern Mexico and southern Arizona say that sound or music is the intelligent language of the universe. So if it's a language that is understood by the universe, then I've had stars respond. I've had, animals, trees, whatever. The wind will all of a sudden start whirling around, and people would call it magic, but it's just making the connection from your heart and your mind and just really believing that you are connected with that being. I've had rattlesnakes. I'd be sitting on the ground in a rattlesnake and I'd be playing a flute and looking at the snake, and it would come right up to me. And, it got about 3 feet away and I started playing a Leave Me Alone song.
Wow. Well, it's just right out of one of those Bollywood movies where the Sufis like playing the pipe or the flute to the King Cobra.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I had it's called a green Mojave. It's one of the larger poisonous in the rattlesnake family, basically. And it was under a porch of the old woman that I was staying with. And I knew that it would be dangerous for her. So I got out a little flute and I started playing. And it came out from underneath the stairs and it started dancing. And it stood up. It was about, I don't know, 4 feet tall or something at least. And I was amazed. And then my friend had a snake catcher forked stick, and so he was able to catch it, and we took it out into the desert and set it free. But, that was, like you're saying, those cobra charmers.
Wow, it's just the power of sound.
Right.
But, it can come in waves too. Like I tend to do that because animals are not really focused on past or the future. They're just about this present moment. It's easy. Mm-hmm. And I'll sort of like create a wave, a brain wave, and just slowly sedate them and put them to sleep, which is really cool to watch because it happens real time. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's powerful. And children, I mean, if we use music with children, I've worked with a lot of autism and behavioral issues with kids. And it's fantastic, really, to see the transformations and the communication that kicks in. You know, before I was working with them, no one could understand what they were talking about. And then after working with the sounds that we found that could liberate and open up their communication, they were playing music, they were talking. Yeah.
Yeah, children are amazing
Yeah.
at embodying this stuff so quickly. And the
Truly.
music is, an incredible expression. So you use the harp. What are some of the other favorite instruments that you would use? A flute, a harp? Do you pick up a guitar? Do you?
Yeah. I started actually with the guitar when I was 15, and I played the guitar for many years, and I made up songs, and I would sing. And I had a friend one time who tricked me. I was petrified of having anyone hear what I was doing. And, performing was out of the question. And he booked me in this, I think it was midnight, so most people had gone home, thank goodness, but on the stage in Eugene, Oregon. And I had to get up there and sing my song. But anyway, I was literally booted into this, because I had a lot of resistance. And so I played the guitar and then the dulcimer, which is like a lap stringed instrument used in Appalachian music. And then in 1975, a friend, I had told about my dream that I was receiving a harp in my dream. So I told my friend, and a year later, he found this beautiful 5-foot-high harp and brought it into my home and just left it. And I was speechless. What am I going to do with this huge thing? And being intuitive, I started seeing that it actually came with angels. I mean, it was nighttime. Maybe I was seeing things, but I actually saw some kind of angelic forms hovering around the harp. So, and then I had another dream that said, you really need to play this instrument. So it was a gradual process. But by 1981, I met a person who had like a new age magazine of some sort. And she heard that I played the harp. I was just beginning. I was just starting, 1981. And she said, well, if you create a recording, and in those days it was little cassettes, if you create a recording, I'll advertise it for you in my magazine. I went, okay. So within 30 days, I had a recording and a whole album. And I just thought, okay, this lady will have it. And, that's it. But a bookstore got a hold of it. And then they sent it to this big company in Milwaukee. And then they started reproducing them in Europe. And then it just went crazy. But, I never had the intention of being like a famous harpist or anything. And it just kind of caught on. So that was the beginning. And 25 albums later, I just did an album that goes with the book I wrote, because each of the sites that I visited produced different music, a different song, a different quality of music. So I put 20 songs together on one album that reflects all the sites around the Pyrenees that I discovered. And a lot of the sites are actually on the Paris Meridian. And the Paris Meridian is marked with temples going back 6,000 years, long before they measured the meridian in the 1600s. And I found that extraordinary. I thought, how can this happen? How do people work with these meridians from so long ago? They just were more sensitive. They could feel where the magnetic lines were running. And then especially across the Pyrenees, it's a fault, a big fault, with the coming together of the Eurasian and the Iberian plates. And it creates a lot of energetic discontinuities. So ancient people were attracted to these areas with unusual levels of electromagnetic energy. And they built their temples there so they could access in their rituals and in their burials or whatever they were doing in these stone temples. They could access the interdimensions more easily. So each of those sites, both along the Paris Meridian and the Camino de Santiago, make a cross, an equal arm cross, and there are 6,000-year-old stone temples marking the end of each end of the cross. So this is one of the things I discovered in the Pyrenees region, and many other things that are relative to the initiatic path of the Camino before it was the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. That was more of a Christian overlay on a very ancient path. So, you know, it's just, our world is filled with mysteries. It never ends.
Now, you mentioned these ley lines. So what we normally have we tune ourselves to be basically a human dowsing tool. And that's how we discover vortices and ley lines and everything, just through the energetics. It's just a Taoist practice.
Right.
Do you look for these things yourself when you're gravitating to a certain place you want to cultivate or create music? Because there's a palpability from just your breath that is really quite something. And that's clearly from your honing and your mastery. Do you have a specific practice that you do outside of playing your music? Are you consciously cultivating energy or clearing or creating or anything of that nature?
Yes, absolutely. Every day I do a breathing meditation, and it's a very simple meditation rooted in my Tibetan teachers that I've followed for, I don't know, decades. And it's just a simple breathing exercise. And I developed it, I call it the golden cobra breath. And this is just something that I created, but following the breath internally to create the internal circuit with the tongue at the roof of the mouth and circulating the breath. And before that, sometimes I draw in the energy of the stars or the sun to, connect energetically and then circulate that energy. So I've been doing that for many, many years. And, I'm sure that helps the intuitive faculties. But I do have a friend, a Catalan friend, who's been my guide to some of the sites. And he was trained by Chinese Taoist practitioners. So he dowses with his body as well. And I tend to use copper L rods because I'm not, exactly trained in that. But we found the same things, whatever way we worked. We found the same energy fields in the sites. And then we tested the sites to see like what the baseline energy field was and then what the field was after connecting with the site and offering music. And before I offer music, I always ask, what tone would you like to hear? What tones are indicative of your energy here? What is your purpose? And I usually do that first and then just listen for the sound. And I intuitively get the sound and then I start working with those. And there was one occasion that was really striking. I'll try to keep it short because it's a long story, but it was at the largest dolmen in Catalonia that marks the eastern end of the original Camino. We call it the Way of the Stars. And it's in view of the Pyrenees and the sea both. So it's very alchemical with the salty water, the high mountains, and this connecting and grounding in these stones. And the stone dolmen is oriented to the winter solstice sunset. And so I was in there playing my harp, listened for a tone, played the tone, it developed into a piece of music. And after I completed the ritual and the music, I went back to my hotel, and there was an email on my inbox from the Space Weather website that there was a very rare musical tone that entered the northern axis. And I was doing an attunement to the northern axis because there's an alignment to this dolmen to the North Pole. And so this tone came in, and the scientists that monitored it said it was very unusual because it was a specific musical sine wave that lasted. Its duration was like 2 hours. It was in the atmosphere and moving across the earth as well. So I contacted the scientist immediately and I said, what was the tone? And he gave me a long, number because it was in kilohertz. And I brought it down in octaves to the audible range. And it was the same tones I was playing in the dolmen. So I asked him, do you feel it was a coincidence or a co-creation? And the scientist said, I believe it was a co-creation, or I would like to see it as a co-creation. So this is one example of many of how I've been working with the different celestial bodies and asking for music and then getting a response. So we can do it with children, animals, stars. There's no limit.
It's so powerful. So, I like to remind people everything starts as an energy, then it has a vibration, then it has a frequency, and, you're holding the resonance that makes it possible to be that dense, palpable sort of like transmission of change, because this is not something that's sort of fly by night or airy or you cannot experience this. This is density. And your attunement to what you do is representative in your breath. And that's something that we use within Taoism is the breath. Or you're just on. Like, I don't know whether anyone's told you that, but you're on. Whatever's coming out of your mouth is going to have a healing or a serious energetic effect to anyone around you. That's just part of what it is.
I better keep it pure and good. So my message in response to what you just said, and no one has told me that, but my trainings for people in bioacoustic medicine, and it's on my website, it's all explained what it is with the hope that we can get thousands of people doing this. And when I work with a client, I always take them into a meditation with the breath, the circulation of the breath, just following the breath with the awareness before I get them to do their sounds, because then they're more authentic and they're connected with their authentic tones, which most people have become disconnected from the sound that connects with their authentic state, their emotions, their thoughts, etc. So I take them through a whole process, which definitely goes into the breath first. And I always hope that they will continue with the meditation after. But in my training, we do this. I get them to go into that. And, it's just a really simple variation, but based on a basic Tibetan breathing exercise.
Yeah, it sounds very, very similar in nature to something Taoists use. It's called the microcosmic orbit.
Right.
Yeah. It's very powerful. Very powerful.
Yes. Can you imagine what would happen to our world if all of our leaders started doing that and asking for purification? Everything would change, right?
Yeah. It's definitely having people like yourself and myself helping the conscious collective. It's all contributing to a greater cause, I believe.
Yeah, it's catching on, and more and more people are waking up. I have so many clients that in the beginning of the session, they say, I've been a this, I've been an engineer, I've been a that. And all of a sudden I want to do something that is going to help humanity. I want to learn some tool that I can use to help people. First of all, help myself. I mean, that's the first step, right? We have to clean up our own consciousness in our own lives. And yeah, but ideally having everyone catch this wave.
Yeah. So would you say that when I use sound, I kind of like it affects from a neurological perspective? I know we're talking consciousness, but let's just say from a neurological perspective,
Right.
the permeation of the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve, however you want to put it, being sort of the maestro, the conductor of all things. Would you say that you'd use that sometimes for people's attunement?
I use it to create a coherent field in every part of us, in our energy field, and in our internal working, and in the brain, which controls that main nerve and other nerves. So it's, you know, the computer in the brain. When we did a lot of research in the 1990s at the University of Washington in the medical center. And a dear friend, a PhD who's now on the other side, Juan Acosta, was head of this project. And we tested the power of sound, and even imagining doing a mantra or going into a meditation. Imagine toning, and the brain immediately entered a theta and even a delta state. And the alpha and theta levels were exactly balanced. The coherence in the brain was extraordinary. So when that happens, it sends that coherent field through the entire nerve network and into the atmosphere around us. You know, so you can meet some sage and they seem to be glowing, or they've developed the rainbow body. You know, that's from all of these continuing being coherent by using these techniques of mantras, breathing exercises, toning, chanting. It totally, instantaneously shifts our state of being.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. And, you know, how do I put it? It's just stuff that I've discovered over my journey. I started measuring my own brainwaves quite some time ago. And, you know, when you get to a certain state, I tend to access gamma very quickly. And then the gamma sort of envelops all those other brainwaves. So then you have this 100% consciousness where the whole brain is, you can access anything at will. And I just have this sense that the stuff that you put out is so palpable that takes you right there, because I'm feeling exactly the same state that I feel when I get there through my own practices. So whatever you're putting out, if you were to measure it right now, I guarantee you would be in a high state of gamma, which is a really powerful thing because you sort of operate everything at once. And it's a huge, through several neuroscientists that I've worked with, they measure psychics and other things the way I do. And, you know, it's the gamma brainwave is the healing brainwave. And it just happens.
Beautiful.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I think that, would you say that having done this for so many years that you can pretty much take yourself there very quickly?
Yeah, I didn't even know to call it gamma waves, but I just I've had to handle so much stress in my life with my family. I'm still doing it, handling 4 or 5 different aspects of my business: the music, the sound therapy, the tours, authors, book signings, whatever, you know, PowerPoint presentations. It's kind of unbelievable. And I suppose I must be in that state to be able to do all that. But I find that I have to come back to that center still point, that what you call the 0 point, to handle all of the things that are necessary. You know, and when family members are going through trauma, it's really a test of holding that ground for them, holding that still point. And hopefully they'll catch it, you know, they'll catch that, how to hold that state and be really creative from that state, you know.
So when you measure, you mentioned measuring people's voices. Do you what kind of how do you do that? Is that just your tuning, or how do you sort of like, you listen to someone's voice and you can sort of tell where they're at?
No, there are many different ways to do it that are being used. A lot of people use a computer program to do it, but I don't use a computer program because I feel it's divorced from being able to connect people's specific emotions and specific issues that they want to work with the sounds that they make at a particular moment. So I use a little fancy piano tuner and a microphone and just ask them questions. You know, what would you do if you could do anything? If you could imagine your life, you know, in the most ideal sense, what has been your dream that you might create? And they start talking, all of a sudden that missing tone starts coming in. Or they talk about something they love. Or they talk about a moment in time when they felt completely cared for and loved. That's when the missing tones come in. So I guide them through a series of questions. And that's what I'm training people to do, because personally, I want to retire from personal clients because it's just been a long time. And I want to write more books because I think that's the way I can really reach more people at one time. You know, putting out videos, writing books. You know, it's been music albums for years, but this is a whole different level where I can get more specificity about the teachings, you know, in writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you say that, because Taoists, we have a tonality that we work through in the voice, and you instantly can identify heightened states of emotions. So depending upon the person's tone, and we normally go through 9 different tones, but you get trained in seeing it, and it will associate with an emotional state. So it's really, it's amazing how all this stuff comes together, and it's really universal.
Absolutely. There's a biophysicist named Manfred Kleins. He was also a concert pianist, and he studied the voices of people around the world and how there was a universality in connecting certain frequencies with specific emotions. And he called this science sentics, S-E-N-T-I-C-S, sentics, the connecting the sound with the feeling state. And that's a natural thing for babies, small children, animals. But then it's trained out of us, and we're trained not to do that, not to cry right now, not to utter that particular sound at this moment. It's inappropriate. So then we have to go through the years of retraining ourselves to be able to recognize that connection, and how if we actually give a voice to what we're feeling, we can set it free. We can actually we don't have to hold on to it.
Wow. And when you do these sessions on one-on-one, does it normally, can someone get some fundamental results in one session, or how does it work?
Absolutely. Actually, I try not to be the guru in this. You know, I give them the information that comes from their own self, their own voice. I'm just a feedback, sound feedback. And I give them pointers how to use their sounds, and I set them on their way. And, you know, if a person actually follows through, which is tricky these days because people want an instant fix, and it takes consistent practice, as you know. And, but if they follow through, all kinds of changes happen. I've seen many transformations, both health-wise, career-wise, creativity blossoms. Basically, they just liberate who they truly are.
Now, you use the singing. Have you applied it to the spoken word? Like when you read a scripture, do you have the same visceral experience when you're reading? I have a very much a deep experience when I read the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Reading sacred texts is so powerful. Yeah. Actually, yeah. That's a little too personal. I won't go into that one, but
okay.
No, actually, I will share it. When I was in labor with my daughter, my partner was reading the Bhagavad Gita. And ever since then, my daughter can totally understand the Bhagavad Gita. It's interesting.
Wow.
You know, the transmission in the womb. So what we do to these little children when they're within us is very important sound-wise. You know, singing, chanting, etc.
Yeah, I think I potentially brainwashed all my kids. I have 6 of them because I listened to the 80s nonstop. So they're like, they come out of the womb. It's like you just play it, and they're like, "I love the 80s." They were listening to it their whole life. Yeah, they were just like obsessed with 80s music.
Right.
And, you know, that's what mom and dad love to listen to. So it's definitely part of it. You know, you just, that's that transmission and that attunement. And it's also amazing how quickly children can mirror.
Oh, yeah.
So from a neurological perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
That you can mirror. So my daughter wants to sing like Mariah Carey, and I'm just like, I don't really give her, I'm like, instead of you being controlled by a teacher, I want you to just listen to Mariah Carey and start singing.
Yeah.
And it is crazy how she instantly starts adopting that tonality and that voice.
Right.
And, you know, initially when she started, it was like, oh, it's a little rough. But within days, she started having this incredible, beautiful tone to her voice. And it just gets stronger. The more she puts intention into it, the more powerful her voice is, and the more it's attuning to the way she wants her voice to sound, which is, I think, a testament to what you're speaking of, which it's just...
Right. And what you were saying about little children being so sensitive and responsive, I have to go in a minute, but just to wrap it up, I once had a class of babies at a yoga center. I call them my booted babies. They were about 6 months old. And they would be crawling around and doing their babies things and crying and doing all this stuff. And I would pick up an instrument and start singing. And they'd all sit up, and they automatically sat in a lotus position. And they were at total attention with what I was doing. And even sometimes they would start humming along. You know, they're so pliable. And what we do with children is so important. I know I have some good friends that have been working with kids for decades, and it's just such an important work, you know, to keep the arts in the schools, encourage them. You know, I mean, computers are great, but they need to actually get out in nature and learn the art of listening and connecting, using music, even if it's drumming, anything to really start connecting with the rhythm of the body, the rhythm of consciousness.
Yeah. Well, before you head off here today, I'll just ask you one last question.
Okay.
What's your definition of consciousness?
What a question. Oh, I think the more I go along, the less I take seriously, myself especially. You know, things, consciousness, it's everything. It's being aware. It's breath. It's being in that still moment.
Easy, champ. The second you go into that breath tone, I'm feeling the heat rippling down my eyebrows. I mean, that's just the power that you're attuned to. And it's incredible because people need to have an experiential moment. They need to be able to experience it. They need to be able to feel it. They need to be able to embody it. And then it becomes real to them. Otherwise, it's like, it's like you and I sitting here having a masterclass of words that don't have any energy behind them, and they don't mean much.
Well, luckily I have 25 albums of music and chanting and mantras, and also that system of sound therapy is available on my website. They don't have to come for a session. They can just download the 12 tones and start working with them. Start toning with the 12 musical tones and then see which one they gravitate to, which one feels better, and start working with it that way. And it's very powerful. But I think that the key is for people to, follow some sort of breath work, meditation, and then bring in the toning.
Wow. Well, before we close it out here, I'm going to put all your social under this podcast. I want you to, as you have mentioned it before, but please share with the audience what you're offering, sessions, where to find you. They're going to find you through your website and your social, but that type of thing.
Yeah. So my website has many different aspects. It has music, albums that they can listen to. There are sound samples on every album. There are the sound therapy pages. There's this bioacoustic medicine sound training page that's really extensive. There's the book page now that tells about what the book Guardians of the Dragon Path is about. And it really blends, I think you said in the beginning of the show, the sound work as well as ancient sites and how to connect with the two. So there are many different things on the website. And then my Facebook, I've been a little lazy about posting recently, but I'm going to do something about this mother of all dragons, they're calling this current comet, and the green dragon mother that may steal the show during the eclipse, that she may appear next to the sun and become visible during the eclipse.
Wow. I'm going to be looking for that. I can feel that. Wow.
We're in a powerful, powerful time. Most people are, years ago, who went to see an eclipse, and now everybody's going. And so people are starting to become conscious of what's happening in the celestial realm and how it impacts life on Earth, and weather patterns and consciousness. And,
Do you follow the Schumann resonance at all?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tune into the Earth, Earth and the sun and the moon.
Right.
That's kind of where I get a pretty good idea of what's going on. Because that's everything.
Oh, if we're connected with the Earth and where we stand and what's happening all around us in the heavens, it really helps us be centered in our own compass, our own still point.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. I'm really grateful. And I look forward to continuing exploring this friendship in the future. It was an amazing time for me today, and I really appreciate you sharing it with the audience. And
thank you.
I look forward to the audience diving deeper into your teaching and all the things that you offer, because they're magical. And I appreciate them.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your reflection, and blessings to all your listeners and viewers. May they find that beautiful path for themselves.
Thank you. And I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. And I want to thank the audience for sharing this time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.